So John Richards, we all know as John in the Morning. He is one of the nation's great radio hosts anywhere in this country. He is the host and producer of The Morning Show, producer of Audio Oasis, and associate program director for KEXP-FM. He's been part of the KEXP family since his days as a volunteer when the radio station still went under the name KCMU, which brings me back to when I was like a teenager and I discovered that radio station. I thought I was so cool to find that obscure radio dial. I'm sure a lot of people in the room have a similar story following KCMU into KEXP as this like great vehicle for some of the music that we truly love and what we'll see on stage tonight. A couple other things about John. He stays busy outside of radio through a number of different music projects, including work as a partner at Pear Music Collective, where he offers music supervision and DJs live events. So you can too get him to DJ your event. Tonight he joins us to discuss his annual tradition of the Mom Show, a tribute to those who died. It began with the passing of John's own mother from cancer, and now, almost a decade later, still serves as an opportunity for this community, the KEXP community, to come together to share their experiences of death, music, and how the two can commingle. He is helped in this endeavor tonight by a fantastic roster of musicians. So please join me in offering a warm welcome to John Richards and guests.
Hello. I am guests.
Stars falling from the sky, buildings burning all the time, and tall rivers running wild, stretching out for miles and miles. I think I heard a good man say, God is love and love has made us. But have you seen the news today? I have, and I think God is gone away, if he was ever there anyway. 'Cause anyone that tells you they were born good is lying. We're just born, we are dying. And I know it's been said, but mothers, be good to your daughters, and when they're older, sons, be good to your fathers. This is all we have, this is all we are, blood and bones, no Holy Ghost, empty from the start. Nothing you can do, honey, nothing you can do that would save me. There's nothing you can do, honey, nothing you can do but lay. I don't mind, 'cause I've been finding the only thing with loving more than me is loving you. You get stuck staring at the past. You get stuck looking at the future through a looking glass. Well, time is gone when time was slow. This time is all you have, and now it's gone, but now you know. And I hope you save a picture of me in your pocket when I'm gone away. And I will do the same for you. To truly love someone's the closest I've come to truth. This is all we have. This is all we are. Blood and bones, no Holy Ghost. Empty from the start. There's nothing you can do, honey. Nothing you can do that would save me. There's nothing you can do, honey. Nothing you can do but lay. I don't mind, 'cause I've been finding the only thing with loving more than me is loving you.
That's Noah Gunderson. Please give him a round of applause. I almost didn't come here tonight. How many here almost didn't come here tonight? Raise your hand. I'm so proud of everyone who came here tonight. This is not easy. It's not easy to get together and talk about grief. It's not easy to get together and talk about something that's easier sometimes to hide from. And I've been so busy putting this night together to make it something special for all of you, I forgot to grieve myself. That's ironic. So I'll be going through the same process as you are tonight. I want to welcome you to Death and Music. This is the second time we've done this. It is a marketing nightmare. If you're here for a death metal show, maybe Shawn, you could. I asked Noah after his session, hey man, I have a show I'd really like you to play. And he was so kind to say yes, that did all the musicians did tonight. The Mom Show is, we've taken the Mom Show, what we do on the radio, and we've put it here in Town Hall, and I can't think of a better place or better people to do this with than Town Hall. This is such an amazing venue in our city, and I back up everything that was said about supporting it. It is a gem here in Seattle. It sounds like a lot of you are familiar with KEXP, you're familiar with the morning show, but real quick, I'm John Richards. I host the morning show on KEXP. I've been doing it my entire adult life. If it weren't for my mother, I would not be. She was at times the only person who believed in me. When I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm gonna drop out of school and volunteer at this station. I said, that's not a good idea. You need the student loans. I'm like, all right, I'll stay in school and I will do the show. And I've been doing it ever since. So I'm thinking about her tonight, as I know you're thinking about a lot of people in your life. This didn't start with my mother. My father passed September 9th, 2000. My dad died the same way as my mother. I didn't know that was going to happen twice in my life at a very young age. I watched them both die over 2 years' time each in their living room, and each horrifically as cancer took every last bit of them away from me. One thing that made me mad is that they both, and I said this last year, lost their battle to cancer. Nobody loses their battle to cancer. Nobody. They all fight and win. Some die, but they all fight and win. There's different ways to go through death, as you know. I struggle with this conversation because I want to come in here, and I've told some of my friends and my wife this, that I want to come here with a solution. I want a solution. And I've come up with one, and it's to bring every person we lost back. We live in a very, very advanced city. I'm hoping the technology... So next year, it's my only solution. And that's why I struggle with this, because at the end of the day, we all know death awaits. And we all know we're going to lose those loved ones, maybe before us and maybe after. So it is a struggle for me to come up with a solution. But for me, you guys showing up and sharing this room, maybe it's only the second time you've been in a room this large with people thinking and talking about someone you lost. When DJ Riz married my wife and I, which is awesome, he said, the next time I see all of you like this, it'll be under different circumstances. And there was a long pause, like, where? And then it hit everybody. And it's true. So thank you for being here tonight. So my father died, and I had to be on the air. I had to be on the air on a Saturday night on Audio Oasis, and I did the local show then. I was on the air 7 days a week then, paying my dues. And I didn't know any other way but to get on the air and talk about it. I talked about all the good times. I was at this great show. I was doing this great thing. So I want to talk about the bad things. So I got on the air and I said, my dad died today. And I want to play music. For you and for me, I need to play music because music helps me. I'm sure it helps. If you're in this room, it probably has helped you. And the reaction was unbelievable. It turns out I just didn't know enough about radio to know not to do that. So, which has really been my formula for the last half of my adult life. And it was unbelievably powerful. I could feel it like I feel in this room right now. I'm sure you feel the same thing. And that taught me a lesson about being myself on the air. And then years went by, and my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I had to go back and forth to Spokane many, many times over that time, and I needed to talk to people about why I wasn't on the air. So I started talking about it, and I just couldn't believe how many people had similar stories. And it became a very powerful story, keeping track of where my mom was. Do you know what it's like having complete strangers cheer for your mom? It is powerful, and it meant the world to me. And I knew then, too, I would do everything I can for anybody who listens to my show. My son was born, and my mother died 2 months after that. So when my son was born, and I got the call to get back to Spokane. I got back to Spokane with a newborn, 2 weeks old, slept in my bed that I grew up in, and watched my mother die over the next 2 months. And I shared my son being born on the air. By the way, a lot of people had babies, too. That was a very happy thing to share with everybody. And then death is something I shared as well. And it's changed who I am. It's changed the show. It's changed this community. The fact you're all in this room, the fact we'll do the show tomorrow all together, has really proven that we should talk about this. I didn't have anywhere to go except you guys. And I continue to go to you guys to deal with this, including tonight. So then the show after that, it wasn't about grieving that first year. It was just like, hey, my mom died. I'm not going to be playing upbeat music. Sorry. I have to play sad music. So there was a few hate mails, but I got over it. I understand. Because most of those people are going to come back and say, I had to go through it as well. Grieving is very lonely, and I learned this because now people write me every day. Every day, on average, I get an email from someone somewhere in the world where someone has died. I'm not here to feel sorry for myself, but that is a hard thing to take in. But I'm like a therapist, but super cheap. You just got to get a donation to KEXP. KEXP.org. People are looking to connect, and they're looking not to be alone. And I say it, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it 10 times tonight. You are not alone. Look around this room. You are not alone. You're not alone in your grief, and you're not alone in your unanswered questions, and you're not alone being pissed off that the loved one that you don't want to be gone is gone. And that's why we're here. And that's why I do that show. And I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't have the answers to grief, but I do know I didn't go to school for grief. It's like being on the radio. It was a trade, right? You're on the job training for grief. You don't know anything about it, and then you do. And then you have to deal with it. And you feel very alone. And again, my only solution is to bring them back, and I haven't figured that out yet. Last year, we decided to bring it to Town Hall, and we went downstairs, and it sold out. And I thought, wow, well, what are all these people doing here? And now look at all the people who are here today. It showed me people wanted to grieve, and I can't tell you how proud I am of all of you for being here again tonight. I know it's not easy. I saw people crying before it even started, and that's okay. You're not alone. Tonight, we're going to hear from two different people besides musicians, a woman who lost a sister to murder, her brother to an avalanche, and three best friends to suicide, cancer, and recently a brain aneurysm. Another man who lost his brother in an avalanche, who has a powerful story as well, and four very, very incredible musicians who are sharing their music with us tonight, because that's what the show's about, is music and talk. Last year, I told a story to try to break the ice a little bit, because again, marketing nightmare. And I told the escalator story, where, I'll tell it really quick again. I'm sorry for you there last year. There's only 100 of you. I don't know where you are. My brother and I had found out that my mom had no hope to live. Stage 4 lung cancer. They don't have fun runs for lung cancer. Everyone dies too quickly. There's no movie stars. There's nobody championing cancer. You know what they say to you? Did she smoke? She did smoke, yes. She still didn't deserve to die. That's what people do to make themselves feel better. They don't smoke, so maybe they won't get lung cancer. I understand that. But we had found out she didn't have hope. Then we had to pay a bunch of bills, another good part of that whole grieving and death process. And we watched a man come up the escalator, and I was just in my own head, just sad. And this man made the most phenomenal trip at the top of the escalator that I've ever seen. And he went down, and he had a sandwich. I remember he had a sandwich. And I saw it, and I started laughing. I don't want him to see me, though. So I started laughing uncontrollably. My brother caught it, too, and my brother's my best friend, and we're just like, oh, my God, we're off to the races. Like, I can look at him, and we just start laughing. So now we're laughing. We're trying to, but we're good people. We don't want him to see it, so we're covering our mouths. I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard. My mom, of course, comes out of the doctor's office to pay her bill. She sees me with my hands over my face, tears coming down, and she starts crying. I'm like, oh, Jesus. We hadn't started, Richard's, well, we cry now, but we didn't cry a lot then. She ran over and held me, and we cried together. I'm like, and I look at my brother, I'm like, you know. He's like, good one. And it's so, I'll talk about it later, but you all know this. Death brings the most insane situations to your front door. You see relatives you haven't seen in years. You have people talking to you in ways they've never talked to you. You're driving down the street, and you can't understand, why is everybody else going to work and doing things? My brother died, my mother died, my son died, whatever it is. The whole world should be stopping right now. And this man certainly should not be tripping over an escalator with a sandwich. Anyway, he got up. He ate the sandwich, by the way. Totally saw him do it. It was awesome. And we went on with our lives. And I thought, what story am I going to tell tonight? I got to tell a mom's story. Like how strong she was laying in bed telling us we have no regrets, that she couldn't be more proud of her sons, that it's going to be okay. And then I thought of a story when we were in the car and had nothing to do with her dying. We were driving down the street. She lived in Spokane, not Seattle, mind you. It took me 3 hours to get here. Spokane. And someone cut her off. She's horrible in the car. It's where I get it. And she's so pissed. And it's my mom, right? And so she suddenly reacts, and she's going to flip him off. It's so awesome. And I'm like 14. I'm like, do it. And she thumbs him. I was like, did you just thumb that guy? Yeah, I thumbed him. I didn't want to flip him off. Like, so you thumbed him? She goes, yeah, I thumbed him. So the Richards ever since then. So if you ever see someone driving down the street in a black Highlander doing this behind you, it's me, in tribute to my mother. And that was my mom, man. Not just the woman who died in front of me, not just the woman who struggled against all odds to stay with us for 2 months, not the woman who had machines hooked up to her and kept going and kept showing us what it was to be alive, but the woman who thumbs cars and makes her son laugh and gave me the tools to be here tonight. I miss my mom. I want her back. It's not fair. And it never will be. But we owe it to the people we lost to be in this room. And none of this is on my notes. I miss her. And it doesn't matter that it was over 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. You can feel how you feel. I don't care if it's 50 years after they pass. I'm supposed to get Rocky out here to play, but our 85-year-old neighbor came over right before we came here, minutes before we came here. Pat. I don't know how long we're going to have Pat with us anymore. Pat's been in our house since 1950, and like most of Seattle, is moving out. She is as devastated as she was when her husband died, Dawn. And we hear about Dawn all the time. And she looks as sad as any of us. Maybe you lost someone recently. She looks just as sad, and it's been many years. And she has to move out of her house. She's moving tomorrow to a nursing home where she will wait her last days to die. And all she could talk about tonight in our house was Dawn, and Dawn, how he painted the house. And it was so beautiful. And it's Veterans Day. I don't think it's a coincidence. We're remembering people today. I didn't pick this date because it was Veterans Day, but it felt right, and we told him that. So we wish Dawn a very, very proud, very happy Veterans Day for Pat today. All right, I'm going to stop talking. We have a lot of people to get to today. And music is a big part of your lives. And this is very important to me in this part of the evening. And everyone who's playing tonight, I just love their music, and I just think we couldn't have a better list of musicians to play this evening. And the next guest is my friend Rocky Votolato, who, I don't know when I asked you to play, Rocky, but I'm very happy I did. So please welcome Rocky Votolato to the stage.
Hello. So, according to most studies, most people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. The more public speaking I do, the more I know why that's the case. So I want to thank my friend John for giving me a chance to publicly face my fears here today. And how about a big round of applause for John and Amy for putting this event together. All they do for the community, and I think this is, I'm really grateful to be a part of it. I think coming together around this subject is just a really important thing to do as a community, and there's a lot to gain from it. I probably spent more time thinking about death than an adult human being should. It shows up in a lot of the themes in my music, and I know what John was saying about the marketing nightmare. But, when you're young, you think you're invincible, and I know I certainly did.
And I think I learned this from my wife, similar to John. She lost both her parents pretty young. And, you know, I think when we finally realize that none of us are promised a tomorrow, it really helps us to make the most of each day that we have. And, you know, I've learned that from her, and I'm trying my best to live that way. The song I chose tonight felt really appropriate to me. It was inspired by a poem called Kaddish that I have here. It was written by Allen Ginsberg, and he wrote it for his mother when she passed back in 1959. And I wrote this song that I'm going to play in the same apartment building that he was in when he wrote the poem. He wrote Kaddish there and Howl and a bunch of his other famous poems. And so I knew there was a connection for me to his work. And, you know, a lot of people have come up to me over the years and told me this song means a lot to them, and that they think it's about suicide. And I don't claim to know what this or any of my songs are about, actually, but I don't see it that way. I see it more as it's just about, to me, it's about you know, the final moment of life, and more a celebration of death as a sweet relief for those who are suffering, and you know, and something not to be afraid of. So if it's okay, I'd like to just read a few lines from the poem. And this is Kaddish for Naomi Ginsberg. Strange now to think of you gone without corsets and eyes, while I walk on the sunny pavement of Greenwich Village, downtown Manhattan, clear winter noon. I've been up all night talking, reading the Kaddish aloud, listening to Ray Charles' blues shout blind on the phonograph, the rhythm and your memory in my head 3 years after. Read Adonis's last triumphant stanzas aloud and wept, realizing how we suffer, and how death is that remedy all singers dream of. Sing and remember. This song's called Makers.
Death keeps calling me. She's gonna set me free. No more sunshine, sidewalks, streets, or misery. Like she did for you, while in how you suffered, like we all do down here in a Lower East Side apartment. We stayed up late. The bones inside your mind were all broken. Keys that open any answers were all stolen. Filling and refilling up the glass with makers. We both agreed the final moment, yeah, the sweetest remedy that'll ever be delivered, heaven or heavenless. We're all headed for the same sweet darkness. So she came for you. Well, I guess you'd wanted her to. Now in the safety of a coffin, you can rest 'cause you're through. No more debts or memories, no more heart, blood, or skin on teeth. Final doses to set you free. You escape. The bones inside your mind were all broken. The keys that open any answers were all final moment. It's the sweetest remedy that'll ever be delivered. Heaven or heavenless, we're all headed for the same sweet darkness. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rocky, very much. Rocky Votolato. I've been playing Rocky's music for 100 years now, so it is an honor to have you here. We have another speaker here. It's funny, I have notes to introduce this person. Someone I've known over a decade. I've watched her go through, when I first met her, I watched her go through the death of one of her best friends who was suffering from cancer. I learned about her history with death and grief through that, while that happened, and got to know just how much grief she's dealt with. Our relationship, a big part of it, has been helping each other with grief. We just joked tonight, it's a very bad joke, that between her siblings, and because your parents are alive and my parents, we have like the full deck of death. And when you have as much death, maybe some of you can relate, you have to start looking at the insanity of it and the humor, and we try to in between our sad times. The last friend who died, I came into the house with the boys, and I heard her on the steps down in the basement, and you know that cry. You know that phone call that doesn't make sense? I see a lot of you nodding, and that cry that just, someone's died. And it was one of her best friends suddenly. So we dealt with another death recently. So a big part of our challenge in our marriage is to deal with grief together. And we help each other through it, but we also make it a part of who we are and a part of our relationship. Instead of tearing us apart, it brings us closer together. We owe it to those who are lost, too. I'm very pleased. This is the first time I get to announce my wife. This is very exciting. Please help me welcome Amy Richards.
I just noticed something. There's no Kleenex up here. Thanks, April. So, who here has lost someone they've loved? I mean, seriously, raise your hand. Will you look around this room? Keep your hands up. Again, you are not alone. You are not alone. The biggest lie we tell ourselves is that we're alone. Just look at social media, right? Facebook, Instagram. That's not real life. That's all of us sending our representatives out into the world like we're on a perpetual first date, right? So we assume everybody else has it together. We don't know what people are going through. And so I always say, be kind. You don't know what people are dealing with. You have no idea what someone cutting you off on the freeway is dealing with. Tonight we are talking about death and grief. So we're going to put our social media away, and we're actually all here in person. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. So my experiences with death and grief are mine. They're unique. They're my own experience, just as yours are. But at the same time, we have a human, common experience with death and with grief. Just so for me, I feel like for my age, I have kind of an excess of it. It's kind of at toxic levels. So I have a wellness routine. I have my exercise plan. I got my grief plan. Just like brushing our teeth, weeding our gardens, we have to constantly attend to it. I should also say I'm not an expert at this. I'm not a grief counselor, or I don't have any sort of credentials. Just my experience, and I'm hoping that, sharing my experience can help some of you. The first loss I remember, I was 7, and it was my grandpa Ben. I felt strange and sad about it, but everyone told me it was his time, he's old, that's how life works. And so I believed them. The adults around me seemed to know what was going on, so I believed them, and I sort of moved on. It felt strange visiting my grandmother and not seeing him sitting in his chair with his toothpick sticking out of his mouth and his feet on the ottoman and his constant teasing. It was a little weird, but I don't remember crying or grieving, really. However, the next death that I experienced was drastically different. I was 10. My 18-year-old brother, Brad, was killed snowboarding by an avalanche. I remember the phone call. I remember my mother's face as she got the news. She and my father rushed to the hospital. I remember watching the evening news, the television, and seeing a giant mound of snow and trees and the rescue dogs sniffing for my brother, who presumably was under there. I remember my father walking in the room when they returned and saying, "He's gone. He's gone." My mother sobbed on my shoulder that night as she put me to bed. And I remember for weeks her setting a place for him at the table. He wasn't supposed to die. My grandfather was, right? Grandpas die, that's how it works in the order of things, but brothers do not, especially 18-year-old brothers. I was 10. My parents were so wrought with grief, they did their best, but I don't think that I was ever taught to grieve. I cried in my bed, and I listened to music. It was my sister Sherry that gave me the tool of music. We would listen to Brad's favorite band, The Cars, right? The Cars. One song in particular would hit the spot, "Since You're Gone." Mm-hmm. Awesome, right? So great. I've got the thumbing thing going on. It's rubbing off. Sherry was my older sister by 4.5 years, and my brother's death nearly killed her. She helped me handle my emotional well-being where my parents were helping each other with theirs. She was there for me. Fast forward 11 years. My sister Sherry got married. I had been traveling in Central America, and I got home right in time for the wedding. She planned her wedding date close to our brother Brad's birthday in a way to honor him. I met my sister's husband-to-be that day. I had never met him before. She seemed happy, in love. I helped her get ready. I played the piano for her to walk down the aisle. Later that night, her new husband asked me a question I will never forget after he had consumed several drinks. He said, "Amy, how come you don't like me or trust me?" I just met the guy. "I can't read you," he said. I simply replied, "I just met you." 14 months later, he beat her to death on Halloween night. My sister was brutally murdered by her husband. I was in Thailand when I got that news. I had been dreaming of her, coincidentally, that morning, of her in her wedding dress, and how happy she was that day. I heard someone in my guest house yell for me to pick up the telephone. I picked up the phone, half asleep, and I heard my father's voice say, "Your sister, Sherry, has been killed." It's like I didn't even hear those words, and I'm sure you know that. You know that phone call. I said, "What? What do you mean? What do you mean?" It didn't hit. He didn't give me all the details, but he said her husband killed her. I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I had to get back to Salt Lake City, Utah. I took a train for 13 hours to Bangkok. On the train, I listened to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan over and over and over. It's the only thing that soothed me as I sat in shock and horror staring out the window at the rice and marigold fields of Thailand. After I arrived in Bangkok, I then had 20, I don't know how many hours, of additional flights and layovers to get to Salt Lake City. Music is the only thing that helped. Over the course of the next several days, once I arrived jet-lagged and emotionally exhausted in Salt Lake City, the details of what happened became more and more clear. I watched the news as my sister's body in a body bag was removed from her apartment. I read the articles in the newspaper. And then I sat through 2 months of a murder trial with my parents and many of my siblings. We showed up for that trial the first day, and his mother was there. What I'm going to say next is really important to me. My mother walked over to his mother and hugged her. My mother walked over to his mother and hugged her. Her grief and her pain is just as important. It's easy to be the victim side. You have a finger to point. But her grief was palpable in that room. After the first day, we didn't see his mother again. What I learned about what happened to my sister in that trial was the stuff you see in movies, TV. This isn't real. This is not what happens to us. But it does. It happens to the people we love, and it happens to us, or it can. After the trial, he was sentenced to 15 years to life. For the next 15 years, I had been able to bury him. He was in prison, not real anymore. I saw therapists. I was in support groups. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I spent weeks living at my friend Allie's house. While she fed me, let me cry, we played and listened to music. She made me laugh. Eventually, I did return to Thailand. I continued studying music, teaching piano, teaching English, and I got on with my life slowly. I could stand up here all night and tell you more stories. Just a few years after my sister's murder, I lost my dear friend Martha to breast cancer. She was 32. I had never experienced a loss of someone so close with a terminal illness until that time. Did knowing it was coming make it easier than the sudden tragedy of my siblings? No, it was hell. I know I'm not alone in this. The slow demise of someone you love while you hold on to hope was living hell. I know many of you can relate to this one. Less than 2 years ago, I lost a close friend to suicide. I'm still wrestling pretty hard with that one. I'll let you know if I get anywhere with that. 9 months ago, I lost my friend Allie of 20 years to a brain aneurysm. She dropped dead as she was in the process of appealing her insurance company for covering her brain surgery. She was 42. I have also lost all my grandparents at this point, 2 dogs, a cat. There's been a lot of healing and a lot of music. And yet we are never done with grief. About a year ago now, 16 years after Sherry's murder, I received an email from my mother with the subject line reading, "Parole hearing info." Like an idiot, I opened it on my phone as I was rushing from a class at school to my gross anatomy lab, cadaver lab. Now would be a good time to tell you I'm in medical school. I don't just dissect cadavers. But still, that's dumb. You don't open an email like that in that situation. I suited up. We have these awesome Breaking Bad suits, full mask. And I walked into the lab, and I started hyperventilating. I ran out, took my mask off, unzipped, and I put my head between my knees and just couldn't breathe. A colleague of mine followed me out there and asked if I was okay, and I lost it. Of course, the class thought I was losing it over the dissection that day, which honestly wouldn't be far off given some of the stuff we had to do. But that day, it was about the parole hearing. This news brought me back 15 years. I was simultaneously experiencing a rush of old familiar feelings and anger that I had to feel this again. I thought we were done with this. I was angry because I had already healed, or so I thought. Why was I back to square one? Why was my PTSD re-triggered? I became extra sensitive, jumpy. I withdrew hard. A classmate found me in the fetal position in a chair in a lecture. I had no idea I was doing that. During this time, I realized that all the stages of grief that we get to know, I have them written down here, I had to look them up. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, are not linear. Not only that, they do not encompass the full range of feeling. They can be felt at various intensities, times, and can knock you over unexpectedly. You can go from standing on the beach, looking at the waves, to being dragged out to sea by a riptide in 10 seconds flat in the world of grief. Even 15 years later, I was back to the beginning of the emotional turmoil I had with my sister's murder. It seemed like I had done all that healing work for nothing. Here I was, the same. And yet, I was not the same. It took some time to realize that I had come far, that I had learned so much about life, myself, my family, what it means to love. I had come 1,000 steps forward in 15 years. And even though I felt like I had just gone 900 steps back, I had those 100 steps forward. I could hold on to those. I care deeply about those around me. I'm passionate, I live fully, and I believe a lot of that has to do with the death and grief of loved ones. I can sit with people in grief. They could tell me almost anything, and I could sit with it. I know that it doesn't always help to offer a silver lining or a glass half full approach. People would say to me about my siblings, well, at least you have so many siblings. I do. There's 14 of us, but we're not a litter. We're not a litter of pigs or something, like, that didn't help. Those statements, although they meant well, invalidated my grief and my pain. They didn't help me grieve my brother and my sister. Anyway, the day of the parole hearing arrived. I drove to the airport at 4 in the morning, listening to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan again. I believed I had that on repeat in my car quite a bit during this time. I went to the parole hearing and sat in a prison for 7 hours. 5 of those hours were spent in a small room with my sister's murderer. Small room. His attorney, 2 hearing commissioners, the prosecutor's advocate, the victim liaison, my parents, 2 sisters, and 3 of my brothers. Longest day of my life. After sitting in that tiny room for 5 hours listening to a murderer's appeal, we learned so much more about the crime than we ever wanted to. More and more and more evidence had shown up. As it turns out, many of his past girlfriends had been located and interviewed. My sister was just last in a long line of women who had been brutally beaten and raped by this man. My sister was the unfortunate one who married a serial rapist and lost her life to him. My whole family testified against him, starting with me and ending with my oldest brother, Mark. He was denied parole. This time, he will be up for parole again in 5 years. I'm in a new normal with this. While I had first grieved my sister's death, went through the hell of a murder trial, buried him too once he went to prison, his resurfacing in the form of a parole hearing is now a new normal. I don't get 15 years again, I get 5. If he's denied, I get 5. And then if he's granted, that's a new normal again. We readjust. Death, pain, grief, loss become a huge part of us. When we lose someone we love, we are forever changed by that experience. What I've learned is to take time for grief regularly, like weeding our gardens and brushing our teeth. It takes constant care. One way is through music. I play piano. Sometimes it's just playing for an hour and allowing myself to cry. Sometimes it's putting the headphones on or putting together a playlist for myself in the car or asking my husband to put on a playlist for me. Sort of have that option available at any time. Perks. And it's definitely listening to the Mom Show on KEXP and coming to this event where we're live and in person together. These are things that give us permission to grieve. For me, music is medicine, one of my favorite sayings, and it's one I've seen on t-shirts, in books, on Facebook memes, is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. We will feel pain, and it tells us good news. I'm going to say that again. We will feel pain, and it tells us good news. Pain tells us how much we love. Death of loved ones causes pain. Music and community allow us to work through pain and reduce the amount of suffering. Thank you.
As long as Amy is in that parole hearing, that guy is never getting out. I'll tell you that right now. She's one of the strongest people I've ever met. I'm very, very lucky to have her in my life. And we miss those she's lost quite a bit in my family. Thank you so much again for attending tonight. I so appreciate it. And I appreciate the musicians playing this evening as well, including our next one. I I don't know. If I put together a list of the 4 people I wanted to play, they're all playing here tonight, which makes me very happy. And this next artist is one of the most talented we have in our city. We're very lucky to have her performing here tonight. Please help me welcome Shelby Earl.
Thanks, everyone. How y'all doing? Whew. I don't often, sing after hearing such tales, but Amy is wonderful, and I told her I might hide backstage, and she said, or you could just be in it with us. Wise lady. When John asked me to play this, I knew immediately what song I wanted to share with you all. Sorry, I've got a fussy guitar here. I didn't, however, know how much I wanted to share about it. It's very personal to me, and a song that means a great deal. I guess the gist is the theme of tonight is that none of us are alone in this, right? And I wrote this sort of on the heels of a time of pretty profound loss in my life, and sometimes you need a little distance before you can write about these things. But just like listening to music is a great comfort in loss, so is writing music. So this song is one of those for me. And I'll give us a little comic relief here, a little side story about this song. I was in Ireland at this time last year, playing shows for about a week, and I think it was my second show in that tour. I was in this little bar in Monaghan, a town sort of up north, and it was like a Wednesday night. I played for 2 hours in the bar, played all these rock songs and like bar songs, and then said, thank you very much, good night. And these guys in the bar were like, more, more, more. And not because I had done anything spectacular, but they still had beer. So I said, well, I have one other song I could do, but I would never do this song in a bar. It's so quiet, and it's very intimate, and it's all wrong for this. And they're like, do it, do it, do it. So I played this song, and this guy lifted his pint up at the end, and he said, now you listen to me, man. That song, that's the fucking song Irish people want, man. And that song should be first in every set. Yeah. So I did. I played it the rest of the week in Ireland. And I will play for you now the song that Irish people want. This is called Mary.
Fell from the mountain, I fell so far. Fell so hard, I broke my heart. But you were there for me. Oh, you were there for me. Throughout the water, my well was dry. Held up the offering, tear in my eye. you were there for me. Shout from the shadow, I shout so loud. The echo back, the loneliest sound. But you were there for me. Oh, you were there for me. I saw a lady beyond the crowd. Holding a babe with my eyes, my mouth. Oh, you were there. You were there.
Thank you very much.
You know, one of the nice things about playing at the Death and Music event is the crowd's very quiet when you play. It's like if we were at the tractor, you wouldn't hear Shelby. So you're welcome. It's my gift to you. You know, I was thinking during her song about music as a narrative, that song was made after my mother passed, but you could easily plug it into a situation. And I think that's part of what happens on the broadcast every year or when we play songs for ourselves or on my show. You can plug in somebody else's words to your feelings because sometimes you just can't do it. You don't have the strength, you don't have the power. What Amy talked about as well, those songs bring you back to those times. And our next guest is going to talk a little bit about that. This is someone I've gotten to know first as a listener, then as someone dealing with grief as a listener. And I met his incredible family, his very strong family, and gotten to know him even more. And he became the field manager at Selin for KEXP's new home as well. We're going to miss him living in the trailer next door. We want you to move back to the trailer, Mike, just so you know, but he's done a hell of a job. I was there last night, and it's a beautiful building. Please help me welcome Mike McCarthy.
Well, the last time I spoke in front of this many people was actually 4.5 years ago at my brother's service, and I used notes at that time, and it didn't work very well, so I typed out everything I hope to say this evening. My relationship with Death and Music started in March of 2011. It was a Sunday, and I just returned from a weekend trip. I was exhausted, and before I went to sleep that evening, I checked the headlines on my phone, and Seattle Times, there was a headline, and a skier had died in an avalanche at Stevens Pass, and I was like, my brother's up there all the time, but he's a snowboarder, so I don't have anything to worry about. And I go to sleep, and I get a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning, and didn't care to answer it at the time and waited for a second. There was a voicemail, and I listened to it, and it was from his fraternity chapter advisor, and I knew he didn't say much in the message, but I knew exactly what had happened, and I called him back and just asked if Riley was at Stephen's Pass, and he confirmed that, and then I had to make the most difficult phone call of my life to my parents. Riley was a 20-year-old student at the University of Washington when he was caught in an avalanche up on Cowboy Mountain at Stevens Pass. He loved music and would go to any and all ages shows that he could. At the most crowded venues, he would somehow find his way up to the front row. And at the age of 19, he made a road trip to Chicago to see the Strokes live. And upon his return a few days later, he drove to San Francisco to see them perform again, sleeping on the streets of San Fran in the back of my mom's station wagon. Riley introduced us to KEXP Song of the Day and later showed us how to better appreciate music, which has been an asset in our healing process. As a result, we decided to donate his truck to KEXP. During his service, we incorporated a number of his favorite songs, even though Father Jerry didn't necessarily approve of all those songs. The morning of his birthday in October of 2012, I thought it would be a nice tribute to request a song in his remembrance. I made the song not knowing about the Mom Show or John's connection to death and music. I was commuting from Seattle to a project I was working on in Bonnie Lake, and I sent the song request in at 6 o'clock in the morning and jumped in the car and took off. In the email request, I sent the backstory on what had happened to Riley and listed several songs that we played during his service, and asked if he could play one of those on my drive to work. And at 6:27 that morning, John's tone changed, and he started reading my email on the air. And he played not one song, but every one that I'd listed. Radiohead, You're All I Need, Band of Horses, No One's Gonna Love You, and Arcade Fire, Wake Up. He had some very kind words to say on the air and promised to play a song every year on Riley's birthday, a promise that he's kept. Needless to say, I was an absolute mess driving down 167 and really should have pulled over for my own safety. As soon as I successfully made it to a parking lot, I gave my dad a call. He's an avid listener, so I was curious if he'd heard the tribute that morning. As soon as I got a hold of him, he told me that he was pulling into the cemetery when John started reading my email. He'd stopped the truck at my brother's grave and opened the door and turned up the volume loud enough for Riley to hear too. I was stunned, shocked, speechless, just completely dumbfounded. I couldn't cry. I was frozen, not entirely sure how to react to the complicated mix of emotions I was experiencing. It was a feeling I've never felt before or since, a combination of grief, sadness, exhilaration, and warmth. I can only imagine what it was like for my dad. John's timing was impeccable, and he created an incredibly powerful moment that will last a lifetime. A moment that was a catalyst for a healing process that was still in its infancy. Minutes after that lovely tribute, in October of 2012, I received a very sincere and supportive email from one of the most compassionate, caring, and outgoing people that I've ever met. Scott Redman is a music lover, a supporter of the station, and supporter is a huge, huge understatement. He's also the president of the company I work for. In December of that same year, he sent another email. This time it was addressed to the entire company, and he'd announced that we'd been awarded the contract to build KEXP's new home. I immediately responded and made the first of many requests, subtle hints, at my desire to work on the project, a project that carried a new personal significance. A little over 2 years later, Scott made that happen for me. And in February of this year, we started construction. As the on-site field manager, I had over 8 months to show my appreciation and gratitude for what John and KEXP had done for me and my family. It was a rare and perfect opportunity to say thanks with my time instead of my wallet. I left behind a little bit of myself in that building. And with a mix of emotions, on October 20th, almost 3 weeks ago, I turned the keys over to KEXP's executive director, Tom Mara. Words cannot accurately express the gratitude, love, and appreciation I have for John, Scott, and KEXP for making this powerful and compelling story possible. While this chapter has been written, the saga that is grieving will continue. John's tribute was a catalyst for us to deal with our loss in a way that honored Riley's memory. We adopted his love for music. Live music in particular is what brings us together. It's tightened the bonds we already had. Music has created so many moments for us. The sunset at the gorge, the family photo in front of the fountain at Grant Park during Lollapalooza, at the moment at the showbox, watching my parents as they watch a band of horses perform. No, no one's gonna love you. The hug that my mom received from Charles Bradley at the Muriel concert, the sheer joy on my sister's face while confetti fell around us as Arcade Fire played Wake Up to close out a 2-hour set, or the countless other moments when you're alone with your thoughts and your mind wanders as if walking around the empty void that's been left by a loved one. During these moments, Riley's presence is never far, and our thoughts of him are even closer. These moments often sharpen the pain of loss. However, they become a positive way for us to deal with grief together. While it's often unspoken, we can all sense or see what we're thinking, experience, or dealing with the same thing. It's become a powerful tool for us to deal with the inevitable ups and downs that this odyssey of grief has taken us on. This evening is yet another moment, and I'm honored to share it with all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of this moment.
Okay. Thank you. I know that wasn't easy. And thank you, Scott. You made a great decision, by the way. That guy's awesome. I guess this is really quick before I introduce a little more music. This is a good chance to talk a little bit about our community. I don't know, maybe I haven't mentioned what KEXP is enough. There's no rule to do what we did with Mike or with others at KEXP. We don't have meetings about it, right, Kevin? We don't have that meeting. What we've created as a community is a place for us to go and to share music, and that means sharing life and death as well. And I don't know any other station in the country that does that. And it's not it's not KEXP necessarily, it's our community that supports us and allows us to do that. So I just want to thank you really quick for allowing KEXP to exist. The new home is phenomenal, and what we want to do, kind of like this, what we do on the air, we want to bring to all of you in a big way. I'm in a unique position being on the air there. I mean, nobody else wanted the morning show. It's way too early, so it's super easy, but... But I want this world to be a better place. I've wanted this since I was a child. I do deal with depression. I have all my life. Death reinforces depression. It answers all those things you're fearful of. Oh yeah, turns out life does suck. Oh, yeah, people die. I knew it. Yeah, I have those conversations. Sometimes Amy's present, sometimes she's not. But dealing with that through music, dealing through the grief and everything else that I've had to deal with, I've come out of it a stronger person. I'm so hopeful that the show, what Mike and his family experience, what you all experience on nights like this, I hope it makes it better for you so much. You have so much potential, and I don't want to see any of it wasted because of this sadness. So I hope you can. All right. Last year, we had some amazing musicians perform, and this is someone I've known for many years. He's one of my favorite people in this city. Our city's a better person this city's a better place because of this person. And I still remember seeing him probably an all-ages show many, many years ago. A show I'm sure Riley would have loved when he was with Harvey Danger. Shawn played last year, and it was great. I got to hire Shawn as a DJ. It was awesome, which I loved, and it was an honor to do so. So he is part of the KEXP family as well, and he was great last year. So we're welcoming him back, and you're locked into these for the rest of time, so I hope you know that. And he's brought Shenandoah Davis as well with him to perform. They're amazing, so please give a round of applause for Shawn. Thanks.
I hope it's not inappropriate for me to introduce a somber note. You know, in show business, you don't always want to follow the saddest, bravest stories. But this isn't show business. This is show friends. My grandfather was an actor. I remember when I learned that fact. It was during one of the rare weekends during my childhood that I got to spend with my dad. The TV was on, and it was an old episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And my dad looked up from the dinner he'd made us and said, "Is that my father?" And it was. Not Alfred Hitchcock. The episode was called The Day of the Bullet, Season 5, Episode 20. My grandfather appeared on 3 Hitchcocks and a Twilight Zone and a Rawhide and a couple of other dozen TV shows and movies, always in small character roles, always there for a minute and gone the next. The main thing I remember about this incident was the look of recognition and resignation on my father's face. He'd had even less time with his dad than I'd had with him, or with either of them, actually. My family is defined by divorces and steps and halves and second draft families. Distance is the rule, not the exception. When I went to college at NYU, I was determined to reverse this tradition. I'd gotten to spend a couple of amazing weekends in the city with my grandfather over the previous year. And I was looking forward to more stories about his life in the theater, his own distant father, Irish, about his love of language, about anything really, and he was excited too. He told me to call as soon as I'd gotten settled in, and I said I would. Then I didn't. I don't know why. I just didn't. I just avoided it. Some of this was just the stuff of youth. I don't know if you remember what it was like to be a college freshman. I barely do. But some of it was something else. My dad calls it the family curse, some dread of closing the distances between us that sort of presents as a telephone phobia. Whatever it was, I dropped out of school before I finished my freshman year and planned to move to Seattle. When I called to tell my grandfather this and to apologize for not having been in touch, his wife wouldn't put him on the phone, and she just sort of chewed me out and said I'd broken his heart, and that was 1991. 4 years later, I got the word that he was dying and didn't have much time left. I used a whole paycheck to buy the plane and train tickets that would get me from here to there. I brought a stack of CDs with me and a borrowed Discman. Some of you will be old enough to remember CDs. I spent the weekend wandering around his home in Salt Point, New York, which is nestled between the Hudson River and the Taconic State Parkway, about 10 miles northeast of Poughkeepsie in Pleasant Valley. I'd never been there before and would never be there again, but I was struck by the abundance of heirlooms and photographs packed into a relatively small space, which they fancifully called a ranch house, where he'd lived a long, happy life with his second draft family. They all seemed torn between a desire to treat me like a member of the family and the anxious, terrible knowledge of what my presence indicated for their family. You'll have to come see him again, they said, multiple times. And we all knew that we'd never have that kind of time. They also knew that by design or circumstance, their long, happy life together had been predicated on the exclusion of my father, and later, by extension, me, from participating in it. As a consequence, neither my father nor I ever learned how to be close to each other, though we do love each other dearly. They were outwardly warm, but they guarded my access to my grandfather jealously, and only letting me see him alone for a few minutes when he finally demanded it. And finally, alone, we said everything we needed to say about all the things we'd never had the chance to say to each other. I can still feel the strength of his grip in my palm. Next morning, I left that house full of memories and family that might have been mine and flew to Seattle to see the family I had chosen. My bandmates and I all lived and practiced together in a house in Ravenna, sort of like the Monkees, only without the help of the wrecking crew to make it sound good. We had met each other at the University of Washington student newspaper in the communications building, the same place I would later meet an energetic young KCMU volunteer who had worked his way into the coveted morning on-air slot that he still holds to this day, only with a stronger signal and better call letters. I arrived home to find that my bandmates had been working on a new song right there in the living room and were eager to show it to me. As it happened, I had scarcely stopped writing impressions of my trip, some of them in rhyme, since the moment I'd boarded the train from Poughkeepsie. Before the night was over, we had a new song, which we later recorded and put on our first album, which I heard quite a bit of on the KCMU morning show and a handful of other radio stations, lesser radio stations as well. And a couple weeks after the song was written, I got the word that my grandfather had died. 2 weeks from tonight, it will have been 20 years to the day. But I had my own family now. And speaking of the families you choose, I would like to ask my incredible wife, Shenandoah Davis, to come up here and play the piano so I don't disgrace myself doing it. And also, speaking of family, one of my bandmates and co-authors is in the hospital right now and has been for the last 3 months he has made lots of progress, and then he has fallen back a bit, and that has been the process. It has been fairly agonizing to watch. And I can really only send this song out to Aaron Huffman. Rake up all the leaves in Pleasant Valley. It's the last day of my visit upstate New York to pay respects to the old man. He's still got a sense of humor, but his body fails him. He's surrounded by loved ones. That only goes so far. And does he know where he is? I doubt it. Jack the Lion roaring his last, like a vision sent from the past. Bedside crying, holding his hands, strong hands. Whoa, whoa. Finally get a moment alone with the old man. He's having trouble breathing, and he's not the only one. Only one. He wonders where time goes and why we haven't spoken for so long. He regrets it, he forgets it, and none too soon, because he's closing his eyes and fading. Jack the Lion roaring his last, like a vision sent from the past. Bedside crying, holding his hand, strong hand. Whoa, whoa. We thank you for uniting. We thank you for the cause. We thank you for the lion. We thank you for the claws. Come see him again. Come see him again. Come see
Jack the Lion roaring his last. Jack the Lion roaring his last. Thank you.
I want to thank all the musicians again for spending the evening with us here tonight. We often ask them to donate their time, and we do at KEXP quite a bit, so thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. And I can't sing, so it's good they're here. You know, we talk a lot about advice, and I stress about it every time when I get on the air with the Mom Show or when I'm here. And, you know, I look for wisdom. I'm sure you do as well. You search it out to figure out an answer to all of this. One of the great wisdoms we keep seeing, or I keep seeing, is this revelation that we've never heard before, that this is going to open it up for us, and that is that we're going to die. And I see that time and time again. And you see it in little tweets and little messages out there, and it's a reminder we're all going to die. Well, thanks. I know. Yeah, that's not the issue. That's dealing with death, and I'm trying to deal with grieving, and I understand that some people need to be reminded of that. But I think having a glass half full attitude is good at times. I think that glass half full, for me, glass half empty is death. I mean, there could be some great things afterwards, but right now I'm really focused on living. This is what I'm trying to do. And something we've learned is your glass is half full, it's not half empty when someone passes. It is broken, it is on the floor, there is a mess, and the best you can do is just try to clean it up. That's probably your first step. And people move in immediately. I'm sure you face this with their silver linings. Amy talked about that a little bit. I'm sure Mike and I'm sure Amy, you both were told your brothers died doing what they loved. They died doing what they loved. Well, that means if I die in the booth tomorrow morning, it'll be easier for my kids. I'm doing what I love. Now, if I died at a Kenny G concert, sorry, son. Your dad died doing what he hates. Now, we could try to work out why John was at a Kenny G concert later, but that would really be the mystery with my kids, too. Like, what was he doing there? People are trying to help. I had a colleague of mine at the station recently go through. She couldn't come here tonight. She was not ready. And I told her she shouldn't because she's not ready. But I found myself when she just as I'm putting this talk together, as I'm starting to think about what I want to say the other day, I find myself telling her silver linings. And I stopped, this is the section where I'm like, talk about silver linings, but tell people not the best advice sometimes. And I'm doing it to her because I just want my friend to feel better. So I immediately turn to feel bad. You should feel bad. Own that. Know you feel bad. Go home. Sit and grieve. Take time for yourself. And we talked today, and she was really appreciative of those words because she said a lot of people are just trying to make her feel better right now, and I'm sure you've all faced that as well. It's okay, as Amy said, to feel pain. As a community, we need to feel our pain. Pain is great news. It means we love someone very dearly. So you have to own that pain, in my opinion. By saying we all die, it's a cheap way, for me, I think, to create a cure for grief. Well, we all die, which leads me back to people who may be facing depression. It's very important for me in this talk and any talk I have a chance to mention that. If you know someone dealing with that who's dealing with death, it's up to us to take special care of that person. It really can devastate them. And again, fill in those blanks that they've been filling in for years. And it's about timing. So we talk about, and I'm sure you heard this as well, life is worth living. You should live each day to its fullest, which is a little crazy because I wouldn't do anything I usually do if I was living each day to its most. Everything would be canceled that day and every day. I really don't even know what I would. I'd probably do my show. I'd probably hang out with my kids. I'd hang out with you too, Amy. My sister had a dream when my mom died. She only had one. My sister has really lucid dreams. And I don't know about you if you had dreams after your loved one passed. And you feel like a crazy person talking to people about it. She dreamt, she's in a room with my mother. And they're just sitting there. They're in the living room in Spokane. And my mom, they're talking. And she sees my dead grandmother walking by real quick. She's like, wait. Was that dead grandma? My mom was like, don't worry about it. And grandpa walks by. That definitely was dead grandpa. Okay. But Lee, what you keep asking for every day is one more day with me. Just one. And if we had one more day, this is what we'd be doing. We would be sitting in this living room talking. And she woke up and she never dreamt of my mother again. I really feel like she was there. You're not going to tell me otherwise. It's about timing. We do a disservice to their memory when we don't live life to its fullest, but some of you aren't ready to do that yet, and it's okay. But when you are ready, you need to. My mom would kill me if I didn't get out of bed every morning. I owe it to her to be here tonight, which I almost froze up and couldn't do, and I owe it to her to be on the air tomorrow. With time, we can teach those around us who haven't dealt with grief how to. We owe it to the people who haven't dealt with grief yet. They haven't been in town hall yet, but they might be next year. They might listen tomorrow differently next year. So it's my challenge to all of you to at least take some of this if we're going to go forward and try to help others. Help them before they have to face it, and just let them know what's in store for them. I wish they had. Because my guess is, at a talk about death, most of you have dealt with death, except for those who made the death metal mistake. And you're still waiting. It's not going to happen. And I remind you all before we go tonight, we have a little more to go, but music is one of the tools you need. It's, as we heard those songs, you won't hear the Cars the same ever again, will you? That song, you will never hear the same again when that starts. And it's not on my list for tomorrow, but it is now. I promise. It'll be hard not to play that first. Every time I play Simon & Garfunkel, I think of my mother. Every time. She loves Simon & Garfunkel. I think about taking her to the Key Arena and seeing her. She had lung cancer, and she had this sudden energy because of music. And they played all the hits. It was unbelievable. Everly Brothers opened up, and she talked about how she just loved them growing up. And then when we got to the merch area, it was like, get out of the way, Mom, I got this. And I beat down those 60-year-old women like you wouldn't believe. Like, I'm getting my poster. I'm looking out for my mother. When I hear Cat Stevens, I think of my dad in a gremlin with the windows up smoking cigarettes. They're not all good memories. So when you hear me play Cat Stevens, no, I'm like choking down oxygen. God, what an idiot. Gremlin. Think about those moments, too, with death that end up being both insane and inspirational. We all have them. We could sit here all night and talk about them. Not at the time, but you look back later. Like when my dad was, think about those moments. When you're really struggling, even think about the death moments. For my dad dying, he was sober. That's the only sober father I knew. And my dad drove, not just in his Gremlin, but his other cars with a mayonnaise jar full of vodka at all times. And anyone who's dealt with an alcoholic knows what I'm talking about. Pack-a-day smoker, alcoholic, not a nice man most of his life. But I saw him sober before he died. And I talked to you earlier about saying goodbye at those moments. He never said he was sorry, but I forgave him before he died. And it's the best thing I ever did. It's selfish almost that I was able to do that. And we need to pass that on to others. If you have estranged people in your life now, please fix that before you're laying there watching this man die as his bones are actually coming out of his body and he's begging to die. And he has no one but the two people he abandoned, me and my brother on both sides of him. If you ever saw Magnolia and you saw Tom Cruise, and I didn't think I'd be referencing Tom Cruise tonight. As he heads up to his planet or whatever they do. Is that what they do? Planets? I don't know. You were a Mormon. You weren't, I don't. Do the Mormons do that? I don't know. We weren't very religious, sorry. Anyway, that's what we did. We cried, man, because that was it. We had no more chance to fix things with him. Now, my mother was like a different story. We looked at each other. We good? She's like, yeah, we're good. The only regret she had was smoking. And if I could go in a time machine, it's the one thing I would do. I would go back and I would make sure those cigarettes were gone. So if you smoke, please quit. And if you know someone who does, please tell them to quit. It's not worth it. Trust me. We sat there. One last story I want to tell about my mom and music. We sat, and my mom worked for the Spokane Police Department. I met some of those guys prior to her employment to the Spokane Police Department. Awkward. One day, 2 cops pulled up. The cops were really cool about what was going on. And they had a vigil. They didn't necessarily come into the house. They were guarding the house like someone was going to come in and like make her die quicker. I don't know. It was weird. They just didn't know what to do. That's what cops do. They just look mean outside. And they were like, but they were really nice. Anyways, these 2 guys come in with banjos, full uniforms. The chaplain who was there, he had full uniforms too. It was crazy. So there was my son. He was about a month old, and they said, we heard you like bluegrass, Sandy. She said yes. And they sat, and there were, you know how it goes when, if you've gone through the death process, there's just people coming in and out. And half the time you're cooking for them. And half the time you're cleaning the house. And half the time you just want to get the hell out of your house. And they all mean well. But it's one of those moments you look back on, it's like, that was nuts. But that moment was so good. They got out their banjos and they played bluegrass for a half an hour, at least, for my mom. And she spent the whole time with her hands over her face, like just a little girl. And I had my infant baby with me. And that music we were somewhere else. It was beautiful. So continue to use the power of music, like we did at her funeral, where they played again, because my mom asked them. And when you're asked at someone's deathbed to play, you're probably going to play their funeral. That was a good move by my mom. It was a good booking move. That's how I trap these guys. And finally, a moment for the good moments that you're going to find. My moment is this one, and it's the Mom Show. And I'll continue to do this each and every year, because unfortunately, there's never a shortage of deaths out there. And in the beginning, I promise you I don't have a cure, but I do have a few things I want to say about what I've learned and Amy has learned together. One is that music heals. It heals. It really does, and I think you agree. Don't hide from it. Find those songs of those people you lost and find new songs to grieve with. Give yourself permission to grieve while you hear those songs. Pain is good. It tells you how much you love somebody. Grieve and let others grieve and never judge them. Just be there for them. Remember, the glass isn't half full. It isn't half empty. It's broken. It's on the ground. You're stepping on it barefoot. Your kids are running in. You can't get to the broom fast enough. That's what's going on in your life sometimes with grief. And that glass is going to break time and time again. And the last thing I want to say, and it's something very important to me, and it's something I've learned with grieving, with depression, with being on the radio with thousands of people listening every day, is that you are not alone. You are never alone. You are not alone in your grief. You're not alone in your happiness, and you're not alone tonight. So thank you so much for coming tonight. All right. I want to hear one more song, and Noah Gunderson is nice enough to come up and play one more, since we made him wait an hour and a half between songs. That's not usually the deal, Noah. But please help me welcome back Noah Gunderson to the stage.
Well, you know you've established yourself in a certain songwriter niche when you get asked to bookend the death show. I was talking with Rocky earlier tonight about another project I've been involved with, which is a more of a rock band, and I was saying how fun it was. And then I stopped and thought how music is always supposed to be fun in most people's minds. And then, but what Rocky and I signed up for is
introspective brutality of singer-songwriterism. And but it is a strange job where you spend a lot of time trying to create something mostly for yourself that you end up sharing with other people, and then you go to an airless studio and try to capture some kind of sense of reality and magic in machines, and then you spend thousands of hours in a dirty van with a lot of other people, and then even more hours in dirty green rooms, and then you spend maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours doing the thing that you love to do. And I'm grateful, but it's easy to take for granted the impact that it can have. And nights like this, the atmosphere and the thing that John curates and KEXP curates is an important reminder for me as a songwriter that what we do matters in some way. And so I guess I'd like to thank all of you and KEXP and John for reminding me that what I do matters. So it means a lot. My own experience with death has been limited. I'm fortunate enough to say my grandfather passed away several years ago, which was a trying experience, but it was his time. There was a time when I ate a lot of edibles and thought I was gonna die. But other than that, I've been pretty fortunate. But as a songwriter, I do spend a lot of time contemplating my mortality and the mortality of those that I love and those around me. And I think what John was saying about the silver linings is that they are all bullshit. But all we can do is try to value those around us while we have them, and so that's what this song is. I'm gonna leave you guys with this. Thanks for being here. As we gather round the table to say a prayer for those we love, all the words that will be spoken will never be enough to encompass all the feelings that our brittle hearts can bear. All the storms that rage inside us fill our organs up with air. And the sound it makes is an honest song. Our hearts sing an honest song. All the time spent catching raindrops, all the time we spent in bed, all the hours we have wasted, we'll never see again. So be good with what you're given, for it's all you have to give. We are only passing shadows in a mighty wind. And the sound it makes is an honest song. Our hearts sing an honest song. Tremble in the darkness, in the cold and frozen snow.
I am grateful for the winter, for the winter comes to show that our trouble's never over and our work is never done. With the turning of the season, we will always see the sun, and the sound it makes is an honest song. Our hearts sing an honest song. Oh, may our hearts sing an honest song.
Thank you.